In late April, as Britain stood on the edge of a solemn milestone, preparing to honor what would have been a centenary marked by reflection and quiet reverence, a different kind of announcement entered the conversation. At a time typically reserved for legacy and remembrance, a commercial unveiling emerged instead, polished, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. The contrast was not loud, but it was unmistakable. One moment invited contemplation of history. The next introduced a carefully curated product line, shifting attention from memory to marketplace with surprising ease. At the center of this release were two signature candles, each tied intimately to personal dates, yet presented with a level of emphasis that extended beyond sentiment. The fragrances themselves, warm, layered, and descriptively rich, were framed not simply as scents, but as representations, carrying with them associations that felt both intimate and strategically highlighted. Names were not implied, they were stated. Titles were not softened, they were foregrounded. What might have been a subtle nod became instead a defining feature, repeated with a clarity that left little room for interpretation. This is where the tone begins to shift, not dramatically, but enough to invite reflection. For years, the importance of privacy had been expressed with consistency, particularly when it came to family. The language surrounding that principle was clear: protection, distance, restraint. Yet here, in a commercial setting, those same boundaries appear to have been redrawn. The presence of personal identity within a public product raises a question that lingers. Where does privacy end, and where does presentation begin? The answer is not immediately obvious, and perhaps that is precisely why it draws attention. There is also the matter of formality, of titles that once belonged firmly within ceremonial and institutional spaces, now appearing in a context far more flexible. Their inclusion does not break any explicit rule, yet it subtly alters their setting, moving them from tradition into something more modern, more adaptable, and perhaps more commercially aware. For some, this feels like evolution. For others, it feels like a quiet shift away from previously understood limits. Either way, it introduces a tension between what was expected and what is now unfolding. Taken as a whole, this moment does not stand entirely alone. It fits into a broader narrative, one that has gradually taken shape over time. What began as a step back has, piece by piece, become something else. A carefully constructed identity, blending personal history with public presence. Names, roles, and now associations have found their way into that structure, forming a brand that continues to evolve. Whether this is seen as reinvention or redefinition depends largely on perspective, but what remains certain is that the line between the personal and the public is no longer as fixed as it once appeared.